All right, welcome into another edition of the Garden Report. Celtics fall to the Heat 112-109 in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Miami leads the series 3-1. This segment is powered by CarShield, America's #1 auto protection company. Josue, Pavon, Bobby Manning, Jimmy Toscano. We're going to talk about specifically here Jayson Tatum, who ended up salvaging his game in Game 4, but
looks good in the box score.
It looks good. He had an unbelievable second half, but possibly the worst first half we've seen him play. And it was almost an atypical one. We've seen halves where Jayson Tatum just can't hit anything. It seemed he couldn't do anything. He couldn't get out of his own way. It was like he was mesmerized or sleepwalking. The ESPN crew was wondering if he was hurt. Brad Stevens was asked about it. It was perplexing. So, look, he salvaged his game, but him being this off had a massive impact on tonight's game, and his maddening inconsistencies throughout the playoffs have caused, just severe fluctuations in this team trying to figure out its identity. So, Bobby, I know, you went in on him a little bit. We talked about
the blame pie.
The game as the whole.
Big
but
old piece.
talk a little bit about Tatum here.
Yeah, it comes down to many of the gripes I've had with him throughout the postseason is his shot selection late in games and his ball control late in games. And I give him a little bit of a break on the ball control factor because this is his first year, not only a year, but like half of a year. He didn't start taking the point guard duties until, the February range where he was blowing up the earth from three-point land and running the pick and rolls. And he got so good so fast. We've seen some double-digit assist games from him in the postseason. But you got to look at the other side of it. The turnovers have been so high from him. Not quite James Harden level, but when you're splitting ball time already and you have 6 turnovers, that's high. And to get pulled out of that first half as well, that's something we haven't seen, but it pulls him below 40 minutes in this game. I thought that hurt you in that first half. So I assign extra blame to Tatum because, while it's great he ascended to all NBA level in his first year, all of a sudden you take those responsibilities when the team falls short. And I think, some of his limitations as a ball handler were a big reason that the team relied on him too much in these spots, and they ultimately look like they're going to fall short.
Josue?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's concerning, but it wasn't one of those performances where he's like, going 13 attempts and they're good looks and he just can't get it. It's like, to your point, John, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't move. It almost seemed like he was being too passive. And when he wanted to take matters into his own hands, the Miami Heat were playing him well defensively. Now, I'm not necessarily concerned because I just think 0 for 6, trying to get other guys involved. Celtics had an 8-3 run. I mean, the Celtics offensively, they can go on without Tatum. Again, I think it comes down to the second half execution, late down, down the stretch. Yeah, he's been questionable at times, throughout this entire series, even from Game 1, and we remember what happened there. But this is just growing pains for Jayson Tatum, I believe, and I think that a lot of this has to do with the rest of the team having to figure out how they can be effective when he's not, and they are able to figure that out at parts throughout that first half. It's just that the Miami Heat were so dominant that it's what Jayson Tatum's stat line at halftime was illuminating because of the way the Miami Heat were playing the Celtics.
For me, and I think for all of us, there's no question the talent is there for Jayson Tatum. For me, it's the consistency. I mean, we talked about it, in other series where it's like sometimes he's looks more engaged than he does at other times. But when you want to be considered an NBA superstar, you have to bring it every night. There's no games where you can go 0 for the first half, right? I mean, your team's counting on you to sort of set the tone. They're looking for you down the stretch. You need to go from cook to chef at some point in your career and during the course of the game where they won't have some of the late game issues that they've had if Tatum takes on more of that role of a closer down the stretch, where when they don't have that, they tend to look around and they tend to play hero ball and 4 shots. So I think for Tatum, I need to see more consistency out of him before I group him with these superstars. I mean, you look around the playoffs and there's other young guys that are stepping up. A guy like Jamal Murray comes to mind. Now, I know he's not putting in, 40, 50-point games every game, but he has been a player that's really stepped up and taken that next level in these playoffs. And I don't know if Tatum has really gotten to that level in this.
Yeah.
For
And
me,
it's okay.
it's the number of it's the number of bad plays that he makes, and that's the thing is
for non-plays.
But right, so that's the combo platter, right? And that we've seen throughout the playoffs. That's a little bit maddening. Is a disappearing act like here in the first half, or occasionally ice cold. That's going to happen to shooters. But a night like this where he just doesn't actually show up, or he's totally passive. There's been quite a few games where he didn't in that first rotation, especially when Brad was playing that rotation where he was taking him out at about the 6-minute mark. He might not get a shot off in that time, and maybe that's partly because they weren't running plays for him. But there's a few of those that happen, and you're like, all right, well, you didn't get Tatum going early. Hopefully other people were able to get it. But it's the amount of bad plays late that seem to add up in some of these games, whether it's poor shot selection, a sloppy turnover. There's just too many of those for a player of that caliber, especially when you're counted on to do as much as he's counted on to do. If you're going to have the ball in your hands, you can't make that many bad plays. And again, the turnovers have just been murderous. And, some of the shots and the shot selection and the ISO ball that's kind of plagued them, throughout the playoffs on and off when they needed buckets. It just isn't consistent enough. But real quick, Bobby, I wanted to get a thought from you. I just want to tell you about our sponsor, which is CarShield, America's #1 auto protection company. Call 800-CAR-6000, mention the code BEAT, or visit carshield.com. Use the code BEAT to save 10%. Now, Bobby, you were gonna go on Tatum a little bit here.
Yeah, because he does deserve credit for the second half. I'm going to qualify that a little bit because what he did in the third to make up all that ground, 16 points in the second half of the third, was pretty amazing. I look back on his fourth, he made big shots there too.
Unreal. Yeah.
But you put so much pressure on yourself in that spot in the second half by, the minutes you were off the floor in the first half, the points you didn't put up in the first half. It's weird because it's been the opposite with him. In the first half of these games, all postseason, he's been tearing it up. And then as you get into the fourth, he's got the stat line going into that. He doesn't execute as strong as you want. And he had a few questionable heaves late in the game in this one too. But it's a consistency factor, like Jimmy said. The superstars, the top 5 guys in this league, for the most part, besides Kawhi this postseason late, yes, aren't absent for stretches of games completely. And he's still getting into that. All right, you know what? You got me there. But
all right, I guess there's a trend.
Yeah, it happens, guys. This is what we're talking about. This is unique.
We're hard on him because
we are.
Yeah,
and I
but
wonder.
Some people push him and say this guy could be the best in the league. This guy's going to the Hall of Fame one day. So there's a balance there. You got to be hard on him if that's the expectation.
That's the thing. You're judging him on a scale of a person who he's got to be your best player because he is. He's the best all-around player on the team. It's not close.
Best in the series. He should be.
And he should be. He should be the best player in the series, which means you got to have 1 or 2 Tatum games where he's taken over the game. He's got to win you 1 or 2 on his own. Yep. That's what you're counting on from him. That's who he's supposed to be. And so you're grading him on a totally different scale here. And that's the thing is he that guy? Will he get to that? And again, this is low-hanging fruit sort of stuff, and I hate going into this level of analysis, but the body language, the sulking, the whining with the fouls, the foul hunting, frustration when he can't get going, and committing bad fouls or turnovers. These are things you got to clean up if you're taking it to that next level. You just got to be an animal. Just go get it. Be that killer. And again, I think we're spoiled because we saw it for that otherworldly stretch right before the lockdown, where it was like this guy's on a different planet. He was all of a sudden he
might be a guy.
For those 2 months, he was top 3 in the NBA. He was crazy good. And so then you see this kind of come back to earth, and you see flashes of Tatum we've seen before, not outside of that stretch. So maybe we were spoiled by it.
Well, in the moments he comes through, he has that level of impact. He almost single-handedly changed this game in the final minute with the steal and the 3 and just making 3 plays in 1 minute.
Yeah.
But it goes back to where was that in the first quarter and second quarter? Nothing really changed out there. It wasn't like the Heat completely changed how they were defending him or the team. It was just something on his end that he needed to click or just become more engaged. I'm wondering if John, you just mentioned how hot he was before the lockdown. I'm wondering if he's the type of guy, and this isn't an excuse because everyone's playing on the same court, but I wonder if he's the type of guy that needs to feed off of the energy in the stands or the atmosphere. Maybe he can't get himself going the same way.
Yeah, I don't know. So
he needs Philly's defense. That's what they all need at this point.
Philly, forgot about them.
I just can't get out of the fact that this team is like an identity crisis. Like, they don't know who they are anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we're not quite sure who they are or what to expect. And it's the first time that they didn't have that double-digit lead, and they just were beside themselves. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle it.
Well, the truth of the matter is, prior to the lockdown, when Tatum was going off, they had an identity crisis there too, because they kind of went from being everybody shares the ball and you get your shots, and I got 4 guys who can get 20, to Tatum's clearly the number 1 and everyone get the hell out of his way. So it morphed into a Jayson Tatum team, for better or for worse, during that stretch. And now you come into the playoffs and you're kind of expecting it to be a little bit of that. So again, it's live by the sword, die by the sword. When Tatum's hitting threes at a 48% clip, sure, go bananas. But he's had some struggles up and down. He's still played well. He's been debatable, but I still think their best player throughout the playoffs. It's just, you expect at this level and at this stage, with where they are on the cusp of making the NBA Finals against a team that they can beat, you really want Tatum to carry you.
Yeah, and he needs to pace the team. He can't just unload in the third or fourth quarter, because that's throwing everything off. How you got to that point in that third quarter may have been, a Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown doing their thing, and now all of a sudden are they taking a backseat to you know what I mean? Like, there's got to be some
shifts throughout
even
the game.
flow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you see a little bit in Game 3. Can we get Hayward back in that position? Didn't do that enough here. And then Smart ends up picking up a lot of that slack. So, Jimmy, you were tough on Smart in our last video. He picks up the slack in that regard, and then all of a sudden he takes it to the next level where he gets carried away with that role. And all of a sudden the spot we think Tatum should be in belongs to Marcus Smart for an entire quarter of a game. Mm-hmm. For better or for worse, you're going to get great things with that and some bad things with that.
And then you yell at each other in the locker room when that happens,
Because you're a family and families fight.
Yeah.
It's almost like him and Jimmy Butler sort of going through the same kind of motions this series, right? Like they find stretches where they can go off, when it matters most, and then when the team really needs them, they come up flat here and again.
But the difference is,
you're about to say it too. Like the Miami Heat, Jimmy Butler supporting Cass has been a whole nother different level of focus compared to what Tatum's has going on.
Butler's been able to get those players involved and get them going and doing what they do well, whereas
and
Tatum,
he's better at that than Tatum, probably, right?
Tatum's not good at that. He doesn't. When Tatum's off, he's not necessarily making other players better around him.
Well, again, fair or not fair, a lot of the burden falls on Tatum. Otherworldly second half in Game 4, just a brutal first half, and the Celtics go down. I'm not going to say it's Tatum's fault. We're just going to say,
nope.
They might be looking to you to save them, Jason. That's all.
Right.
Oh yeah, Jason. Game 5. That's all you, man.
And see it right. It's all you.
We give him the praise
no
too.
pressure.
We give him the praise too.
No pressure, but it might be up to you.